Many of you know, 18 years ago, I had a car crash, and I then suffered with a bad back for a good 10, 12 years, probably after that. Part of that then led into having issues with my shoulders, had poor posture, because I was in pain, I kind of rounded and tried to compensate for the pain in my back. That led to my shoulders becoming very painful. My range of movement was about here. I couldn't lift my arms. I remember sitting on the sofa and my kids sitting next to me and wanted me to cuddle them, and I couldn't lift my arm over them to get my arm around them. I'd end up elbowing them in the face. It's not a great feeling when, you know, your young child comes to you, I want to cuddle, Daddy. Smack. Ah, Mummy! I had surgery on both my shoulders. I still was in pain. I had various steroid injections. I had lots of pain meds and those kind of things. And then I remember being prophesied over a staff Christmas meal and given 2 squash balls, which everyone thought was a bit cruel because I used to like playing squash and I hadn't been able to. On Friday, I played squash for the first time in over 10 years. Still moved my shoulder. Anything from the lower back down to about the ankles is an absolute... I did win, but that's besides the point. But anything between the lower back and my ankles is an absolute agony at the moment. But my shoulder's all right. So there's times, isn't there, where that I had shoulder pain and back pain for a long time. But I believe God has healed me. The surgeons and the doctors got to the point where they gave up. They said, there's nothing more we can do. If you get more pain, just come back and we'll inject you a few more times, but it's only going to deteriorate, is what they said. That was their prognosis. And I've got full range of movement, and I played squash, so God's good. My other little testimony is a little bit quicker. Many of you will also know that just over a year ago, I had a heart attack. I know, I'm too young, but I did. It's just past the first anniversary. But when I left hospital after having had the heart attack, I hadn't read my notes properly. And I got the follow-up phone call from the nurse who wanted to book me in for the cardiac rehab, where incidentally I halved the average age and the average weight in the room. But she rang, and I remember being in the shop. Mel, my wife, had broken the screen on her phone, and we were in this shop getting it repaired, and I got the phone call while we were in the shop. And I'm standing there, and I remember the words that she said as she was going through some of my notes, saying that I had moderate to severe damage of my left ventricle, and it wasn't functioning properly. That was their diagnosis as I left, and all of the consultants were saying I would need bypass surgery for 2 other arteries that had been narrowed. I had to find a chair in the shop, and I remember being quite discouraged by that because I felt completely normal, had a heart attack. 3 hours later, I was back on the ward, and I felt completely normal. But what was being spoken over me was something completely different. My granddad, on my dad's side, had his first heart attack when he was 43, and he had a lot of heart attacks in his life. And I guess there was this potential fear that could be what my life would be like. Heart attack after heart attack after heart attack, in and out of hospital, never being quite fit enough to do anything, because that's what my granddad's story was. So, got prayed for. 6 weeks later, I was back in the hospital again having a stress MRI test. If you can avoid having one of those, do. It was probably worse than the heart attack. They inject you with some drugs which do crazy things to your heart. They make you feel like you're suffocating, and then they say, if you could just hold your breath and stay still, when you already feel like you're drowning. But they took a series of photos of my heart, and when I came out and had the meeting with a consultant, I was discharged almost immediately because my heart looked normal. It had evidence of a heart attack, but it was only on the surface. There was no damage to the heart. I was getting enough blood flow, and the other arteries were functioning fine. So 6 weeks apart, they were the 2 pictures I was given. I believe I was healed. What I don't fully understand is the difference between the 2. One of those journeys of healing took upwards of 15 years between my back and my shoulders, and the other one seemed to, I don't know whether it was instant or not, but certainly within that 6-week period, it felt like God did something miraculous. And we know, don't we, from Scripture that Jesus healed all who came to him. We read it countless times. You can read it in, in Matthew 15. These are 29 to 31. It says, Jesus returned to the Sea of Galilee and climbed a hill and sat down. A vast crowd came to him, people who were lame, blind, crippled, those who couldn't speak, and many others. They laid them before Jesus, and he healed them all. The crowd was amazed. Those who hadn't been able to speak were talking. The crippled were made well. The lame were walking, and the blind could see again. And they praised the God of Israel. And I've listed just a few other verses there. In all of those verses, every single person that came to Jesus was healed. Whether they came to him or whether they were brought to him, they were healed. Not one person left without receiving their healing, and often much more than their healing. Restoration to community, to family. He healed every type of disease, every type of illness, and every type of infirmity. There was nothing, whether big or small, whether, oranges and tomatoes to heart attacks and getting out of wheelchairs. Nothing was too big and nothing was too small for Jesus. The only condition that I see on receiving that healing was that they were in Jesus' presence. That's it. It wasn't down to whether they chose to come, because some people were brought. It wasn't down to anything other than Jesus being present. Interestingly, the Bible also tells us, however, that where there was unbelief and no faith, when Jesus was back in his hometown, it records that he was unable to do any miracles among them, except to place his hands on a few people and heal the sick that were there. Couldn't do any miracles, but he could heal the sick. To me, that tells me something about the heart of God in wanting to bring healing to his children. It's interesting, isn't it? Every single person that came to Jesus was healed. Walking on water happened once. Feeding a multitude of people, maybe twice. Calming a storm, that was a one-off. Finding money in a fish's mouth, slightly odd miracle maybe, but it only happened once that we know of. These are kind of miraculous occurrences that happened once, maybe twice. But healing for Jesus was an everyday, normal, expected occurrence. It may well be supernatural, but maybe it doesn't quite fit the definition of a miracle that we've come up with. Miracles are few and far between. That's why they're called miracles. And yet, healing was the everyday normality for Jesus. So if Jesus were to walk into the room right now, what would your expectation of him be? If you're here and you need healing, I know, I'm aching a bit. I wouldn't mind some of that right now. Ankles in particular, strangely. But if Jesus walked into the room, what would your expectation be? In Scripture, we see people's expectation. They heard of Jesus coming and they would run. They would come and find him. They would bring their sick. They would reach to just grab the edge of his cloak in the expectation that they would be healed. When Jesus turns up, that's what we expect, isn't it? 3 people. Is that what we expect? Because the reality is that Jesus is in the room right now. He was here when we walked in because he came in with us. He lives in us. He's been here all evening. Jesus is in the room tonight, and I want to raise our expectation for the miraculous tonight, for healing. Bill Johnson says that it is inconsistent to have Jesus pay a price for healing and for us to believe it's not God's intention to heal. You wouldn't go to a restaurant, pay for a meal, and then walk out without eating it, would you? You'd be mad. Jesus paid the price for healing already. It's a done deal. There is no way that his intention is not to heal. I don't understand why some healings take longer than others. I don't understand why some people maybe don't receive their healing. I know we've been praying for people in the past and they're no longer with us. I don't understand all the mystery in it, but I know that the deficit is never on God's side of the equation because he's paid the price and he's willing. And I want to encourage us tonight as we maybe hear some of the words of knowledge that are going to be shared, as we coming expecting something of God, to lay hold of all that he's got for us, because his intention tonight is to touch us, to heal us, because it's done. He's already paid the price. he heals all who come to him.